weighs in on what's going on in the UK, and more information comes to light about my YouTube ban. So years ago during COVID, when Chrystia Freeland was 100% the deputy prime minister, or I don't know if she had the title officially, probably during COVID, I think so. But the head CEO of YouTube is Chrystia Freeland's college roommate? What? There's lots to get to. Let's get to it. Did I say that already? Amazing Polly says, Polly St. George will never promote crypto. Says, what? Canada's finance minister was college roommates with Susan Wojcicki? I'm getting her name wrong. The old YouTube CEO. What's his name? Foundering? Wrote a song about her because she banned him on YouTube too. But it's weird. Like, I feel that the censorship on YouTube is extra special for me. And I think this is why. No, I think Justin Trudeau disliked my show more than Chrystia Freeland disliked my show, but I think Chrystia Freeland would make a call on behalf of Justin Trudeau to Susan there to get me banned, like super duper banned, right? Like that. So pretty wild. Canada Trade says, great meeting with my amazing college roommate, Susan W. of YouTube, says Minister Freeland. So that's years ago. And Susan just died, by the way, right? So she died, I think, of turbo cancer or something to that effect. So people were pointing out that, isn't that interesting that she was seemingly one of the inner circle people doing all of the censorship on YouTube, and now, you know, she's gone, right? So no special spot at the table for her, right? No saline shot indeed. Diana Murphy says, when the press works for the state, everyone loses. What else has this slimy government circumvented? I'm actually afraid to find out. Yeah, they've circumvented quite a lot. And no, sorry, here's the article. Press must call out Prime Minister's lies. So this is Ottawa Citizen. The Ottawa Citizen is a far left liberal supporting rag mag, basically, and they're calling out the Prime Minister and the PMO. And I'm actually going to read this whole thing out. It's an opinion piece, but this is an opinion piece that wouldn't have been written last year, I guess. At some future point, historians will need to judge precisely when the free press died in Canada, and while historians are rarely able to identify the exact moment of an institution's death, this past week is in with a strong shot. I would say COVID, actually, but probably well before that too. Do you know how Stephen Harper lost the 2015 election? It's because a kid washed up on a beach around the world, and the Canadian press blamed Stephen Harper for that, and the Canadian public believed them. So yeah, it's been before that too, right? Before COVID, before this week, and before 2015. So anyway, not that you'd know it, the much vaunted free press certainly isn't saying much about its own demise. The mighty parliamentary press gallery, a not infrequent thorn in my side when I was director of communication to Stephen Harper, has been quiet as a mouse. Strike that. The gallery is the dog that isn't barking. What am I on about? This week, a Substack author figured out the Prime Minister's office repeatedly lied to reporters about the Prime Minister's schedule, saying that the Prime Minister had no upcoming events when he, in fact, did, including meeting other political leaders, thereby denying reporters a chance to properly cover and scrutinize the Prime Minister's activities and work. This includes after-the-fact attempts by his staff to cover their tracks on the Prime Minister's website. Thankfully, that Substack author was Paul Wells, a well-known veteran journalist, formerly of Maclean's, the National Post, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, and the Montreal Gazette, a man who has written multiple books about prime ministers and their activities, a man, in other words, who knows his stuff. And yet crickets. A quick Google reveals precisely 0 follow-up stories from other Canadian media. A quick check of the social media accounts of the Parliamentary Press Gallery executive reveals no tweets of protest. The president's account is protected. The Prime Minister's office lied to evade press scrutiny, and the press said nothing. Go ahead and stick a fork in yourselves. That's all she wrote. It's over. Contrast this silence to when the Harper government implemented a list system for the gallery when taking questions in Ottawa. The change produced howls of protest for months. Or contrast Trudeau's deception to when the Harper government forced media requests to be answered via various ministers' offices within departments and not via departmental officials, including scientists directly. Again, howls. And when we started using social media to issue our own photos and interpretations of events, rage. The Trudeau government promised to do none of this. It promised to be open by default. It decided to put the Prime Minister's daily schedule online, and now it's decided to lie about it while still pumping out its own content. Now, this isn't about the Prime Minister's security, excuse me, I thought it said scrutiny. He has an entire team to protect him while he's in public. The Prime Minister's office could let the media know if the Prime Minister is meeting a fellow leader without any of the general public knowing. They chose not to, bar a tip-off to a CP reporter. If we had played favorites like that without the knowledge and arrangement of the rest of the gallery, we would have been crucified. What's changed? Certainly not the role of the free press. What's changed is everything else. The media are suffering a death by 1,000 cuts thanks to tech companies taking their ad money. I want to come back to that really quickly when I finish reading the article, and it's not long, so I'll come back to that in just a second. The press's challenge function grows weaker by the day as an ocean of content rises to drown it out on platforms that are incentivized to promote the sensational over the accurate. A single Paul Wells Substack post, while fragrant and rapier sharp, is but one small fart in a hurricane of other more enticing scents. Back to the dogs not barking. What's also changed is the Liberal government has multiplied the number of taxpayer supports for reporters and jammed them further down the newsroom collective throats to help journalism. Even if this funding has nothing to do with not covering the Prime Minister's lies on scheduling, the public's perception could easily and forgivably be that it has everything to do with it. That, friends, is the way to lose trust, to ensure death. The time to do the job is now. So I don't think Paul Wells is, while he may be long in the tooth, he's long in the tooth listening to what his masters tell him to write and writing that. So I'm not convinced necessarily that Paul Wells is the paragon of virtue and knows everything about everything. But it is interesting that he put out this article calling out the PMO for misleading the press in order to avoid press accountability, and then nobody else writes about it because the Prime Minister is paying them off, because that's your biggest customer, and you don't go poke your biggest customer in the eye, right? And so that's kind of what's going on. The other thing that I wanted to mention here, he says, what's changed? What's changed is the media are suffering a death by 1,000 cuts thanks to tech companies taking their ad money. Ooh, those mean tech companies, right? I think that actually what's changed, like if you had a newspaper and it was focused on financial news, right? If your job was to tell people financial news and you didn't like the returns that came in, right? You saw the returns that came in and you were like, well, that's bullshit. I hold these stocks and they shouldn't be going down like this. I think that we should make them go up. Let's make them go up. So you start changing what the real numbers are to what you want them to be, right? I don't think your newspaper would do well. Right? I don't think people would buy it because you're not publishing believable information. You're publishing ideological information for some other means, for some other reason, right? And so your newspaper would lose credibility and lose money and lose shares and all the rest of it, lose market share, etc., as people abandon it, because when they look at your newspaper, they're not getting the real news. They're getting ideologically tainted news, right? By whoever the editor is allowing these false numbers to get through. Right? Same with these newspapers. They're publishing ideological bullshit. People are saying this reads like bullshit. Also, it's very poorly sourced, poorly written, and boring to read. And I'm not interested in having my head stuffed full of ideological bullshit. And so they stop reading the newspaper. And tech companies or other, right? Like, I don't know if Canada Poly would count as a tech company. It's an online publication. People pay me for access to the full show. Bingo, bango, bongo, right? Like I'm sustainable, right? Magic, woof, right? People like my product and they pay me for it. Bingo. And people don't like this product and they don't want to pay for it. And it's not media death by 1,000 cuts. It's media putting the gun in their own mouth and saying, the government's going to pay me for this, right? And then somebody saying, yep, and then pulling the trigger enthusiastically because that's what they've done, right? Like, and they don't see that. And they see the tech companies stealing their ad money. You know, you got to go retool your product there, guys. You got to figure out how you can put a product out that people want to give you money for and not the government, because the government should not give you money for anything, right? Like, period. If you're a viable, the government doesn't give me any money to run Canada Poly. Like, they just don't. They don't. The only people I work for are the people who give me money because they trust me to look at the news and talk about it in a way that's not bullshitting them, and talk about it in a way that's honest, right? That's as honest as you can be, because you do have biases, and I try and be open about my biases. I really do. So I just think it's funny that they're like, that's our ad money, and I just think that it's the flaw in the product that's failing them, and they're so blinded by idiocy that they don't see it, right? They don't see it. They're like, I write as good as I used to. It's like, yeah, it's just bullshit. You write about bullshit. If you wrote about real things, people would be interested in what you have to say. Maybe. Dozens of us. Okay. Unacceptable Canadian girl says, welcome to Canada, where you can burn down churches and destroy whatever you want in the name of whatever government-funded cause you're supporting. But when you stand up for freedom and try to express your concerns peacefully, you go to jail, right? This isn't England, guys. Not yet. That's soon, right? But not quite yet. This is Tamara Lich. She says, I'm back, Ottawa, and ready for another round of the longest mischief trial of all time. I hope they apply to the Guinness World Records, because like this is a mischief trial. It really should be over by now. In Canada, they want to throw her in jail. They want to tie terrorist charges to this. They're trying to get the online harms bill passed so they can tie terrorist charges to this and they can throw her in jail forever. That's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to January 6 her, okay? In Canada, it's okay to shout about wishing death upon your enemies, block critical infrastructure, vandalize offices, and vocalize pure hatred. Just don't ask for the government to sit down and discuss the concerns of millions of Canadians who were forced into unlawful and tyrannical lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Yeah, so it's a double. There are some rules for some people and other rules for a different group of people. And it's meant to provoke you. Ryan says the Toronto Star posts these two articles 2 days apart. The media is absolute garbage. It is absolute garbage. On the left, a broken Canada? No way. We're wealthier than before the pandemic, and the future looks bright. And then 2 days later, nothing is really getting better. This Toronto park went from 0 tents to being the city's largest homeless encampment. What happened? We can fix homeless encampments. We just need people who are not ideologically tied to the United Nations globalist 2030 plan. And we need to kick all those people out of the bureaucracy of Queen's Park, of the municipalities, and of the federal government. We can fix it. And I think probably local is the best way to do it. And man, Danielle Smith, disappointing, right? Disappointing. How surprising. Anyway, back to this. Sean says, tyrannical and deranged City of Pickering councillor Maurice Brenner and woke City of Pickering Mayor Kevin Ash. And this is a 12-minute video of Councillor Lisa Roberts highlighting the mayor and the councillor talking and trying to intimidate her, dismissing her constituents who come in to support her and who bring evidence and all of the rest of it. And she's on the side of sanity and having a municipality that works for its citizens, and she believes she works for her constituents. And these guys, the mayor, etc., they're UN guys, and they are trying to dismiss the concerns of Lisa and her constituents by calling them crazy wackos, not wackos. He had certain language. Hold on, I'll see if I can remember. Nutcases. I think it's nutcases. I'm scrubbing through the video and now it's giving me problems with the playback, so sorry about that. I think it's nutcases. He also threatens to decapitate the MFer. And so there's all sorts of really strange things going on with people. One of the main keys as well that Councillor Lisa talks about is the fact that these guys use very, very graphic, violent words like I want to decapitate this person and so on, to describe their enemies. But when people start talking about them, they claim victimhood right away, right? Like, you can't use language like that here. It's terribly insulting to me, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, they're talking about decapitating each other and bringing these nutcases into council chambers. And he clears council chambers. There's a whole montage of him clearing council chambers of people who are supporting her. So there's really strange things going on at every level, and you need to clean that crap out. You need to just remove people who are ideologically driven to hold things up, I guess, purposely, right? And that's a part of it, part and parcel of an attack. And you can't just tolerate an attack on the basics of how the country runs, the basics of how things work. Adam Zivos sharing this. A disgruntled Torontonian emailed me these photos, which were taken behind Regent Park Community Health Center just now. This is what harm reduction looks like in practice. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people all strung out on fentanyl. And if you do a close-up on the sign, it says harm reduction supplies window pickup. So these guys have picked up their drugs and they've done their drugs and they're just sitting right there. One guy's sitting on a chair with his like crotch area and stomach where you would normally sit, and his head on the ground. And that's, I guess, just how he ended up, right? So pretty crazy stuff. Harm reduction does harm, and they know that, and they do it because who knows? They just, it's depopulation agenda. I'm not sure, but a population that cared about its citizens wouldn't just hand out drugs that killed you or that destroyed your will to engage with the world around you at all. Contrarian, let's talk about money, because Canada is in a world of problems with regards to our economy and money. The jobs numbers came out, and this guy explains the issue with the job numbers. Fundamentally, the problem is 42 or 40,000 private sector jobs disappeared. Private sector is, you know, a mom and pop shop runs, and they have people who work for them, and they pay those people, and, you know, that's what keeps the economy ticking, right? Replace those jobs with government jobs. So here's this guy. He's done, I've shown this guy before, so he's seek him out. I don't know his name. I've never seen him other than, like, I think it's TikTok, and I don't go on TikTok, and so that's why I don't see this guy, but he seems very popular. Here we go.
Statistics Canada just released the July job numbers. Are we continuing the uptrend? The unemployment rate in July 2022, exactly 2 years ago, was 4.8%. The unemployment rate today is 6.4%. That is a 33.3% increase in the unemployment rate in just 2 years. Yes, that is a lot. So when Chrystia Freeland says that Canada's going to be the fastest growing economy in the G7 next year, did she take a look at the 33.3% increase in the unemployment rate? What it looks like to me is we're rapidly heading out of a recession and entering, which we've been in for the last 4 years, and we're entering a new stage called a depression. I'm going to show you the job report data, but before we do that, I'm going to show you where we're at today. Rise.
So that's a 5-minute video. We're not going to watch all of it, but link is in the description if you want to check it out. And yeah, he's concerned, and he should be concerned, and everybody should be concerned, because it seems like they're trying to crash the economy. You know, like that scene in Fight Club where Tyler's driving and he's disassociating and talking to Edward Norton Tyler, and the 3 guys are in the back, and then they crash the car because, you know, he's gone crazy. And it feels like that, except that Tyler, who's driving, is Chrystia Freeland, and the other Tyler is Justin Trudeau, and they're just sitting in the front seat arguing back and forth about who looks better or something, and Chrystia Freeland doesn't realize the dress doesn't fit. Anyway, Liberal Party says, we'll always fight to give Canadian families the support they need. Pierre Poilievre will take Canada backwards. I wanted to show this because Kamala Harris's whole platform is we won't go back. We will not go back, right? We will not go backwards. So they're not creative. They're cannibals. They eat each other's ideas, and then they poop them out, and they're terrible. They're worse the second time, right? But that's what they're doing. So Trudeau highlights on the left the benefits that the Liberal Party is promising to give people. The Canada Child Benefit, $10 a day daycare, which is false. It's not actually a real program that delivers $10 a day daycare. It's bankrupting daycare agencies, and a lot of them are bowing out of the program because they can't afford it. And anyway, introducing a national school food program, and which again, full of problems. They're funding a school food program. They're not actually feeding anybody. Does that make sense? It's a bureaucracy that they're funding. They're not funding food. And delivering dental care for kids and uninsured adults. That's a boondoggle too. And all of it requires to be, it probably all needs to be scrapped, because they're all bad programs that redistribute wealth. It's communist bullshit. It's socialist communist nonsense. Poilievre's side is an ad for Poilievre because it's simple. It says, my future government will do exactly the opposite of Trudeau on almost every issue. So this reads like an ad. People who lean conservative will see this as a great conservative ad. So there you go. The Liberals are doing the conservative job for them. And that's notable. It's interesting, right? It's like when Hillary Clinton was saying, love trumps hate. And my initial response was, why are you saying your opponent's name in your catchphrase? But okay, whatever. Crazy town. Pascal Saint-Onge, she's the heritage minister. She says conservatives are threatening to destroy CBC Radio Canada after 90 years of serving Canadians, but it seems not all of their team is on board. It's no surprise 3/4 of Canadians want to keep it. So it seems Pierre Poilievre, who is offside again. Weird. Oh, they're calling him weird now too. National Post says conservative MP removes incorrect video after saying a case could be made to keep CBC Radio. Now, I think you could sell it, right? And I mean, they'll probably try and sell it for a lot to an insider, maybe an Irving family member or something like that. But I think it's probably worth less than the Toronto Star at this point in time, right? Like, it's not worth very much money because they've engaged in lying and things like that. The brand is kind of crap, right? Like, I don't know that I'd want to buy it. I'd stick with my brand, thanks very much. But it's funny to me, the whole idea of the CBC working for Canadians. They haven't worked for Canadians for quite a while. Like, they work for Canadian politicians. They work for the Canadian PMO. They don't work for Canadians as such, right? And so using this 90 years of serving Canadians is, again, misleading because at this point in time, they're a naked propaganda arm funded by the government to the tune of $1 billion a year. Should we defund that? Yes. Yes, we should. Absolutely 100% we should. Jagmeet Singh weighs in on the United Kingdom stuff, and we're going to transition into talking about the UK right now. It's interesting. Somebody pointed out yesterday in the comments, on one side of things, you don't want the politicians to weigh in on Venezuela. And on the other side of things, you do want them to weigh in on England. I'll explain the difference right now because it's a fair criticism. For Venezuela, the politicians, Pierre Poilievre, Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland, Keir Starmer, all of the G7 politicians in talking about Venezuela supported Juan Guaido. Okay, he was the G7 pick to displace Venezuela's dictator Maduro. They make the case that the people are their main priority. The people of Venezuela, and they want to restore democracy or whatever. And when you've got Chrystia Freeland telling you that she wants to restore democracy, that's like George W. Bush telling you we've got to restore democracy in Iraq with these bombs here, right? Like it's not believable. I don't believe them in their pursuit of restoring freedom for the people's sake, right? What's the similarity between Iraq and Venezuela? Oil. What does the G7 want to do with that oil? Take it out of play. They don't want it on the world market, right? Because that screws with their climate change agenda. So they want control of the world's oil. Iraq, Venezuela, all of it. Canada, all of it. They want control of it. So you don't use it. That's why. And so they're moving to take over in that way. And so when they say we support this person, the new person they support, the new Juan Guaido, I'm very skeptical of them, and I wish they'd focus on Canada. And in Canada, I wish that politicians like Poilievre, and I haven't seen him say anything about UK, and I wish that he would. It seems so egregiously out of tradition, out of character, out of step for a country like England to go so authoritarian. You've got roving bands of armed Muslims on the streets. You've got people who are violent criminals who've killed people being released from prison to make room for Facebook posters. And no politician in Canada is saying, this is really weird. In fact, Jagmeet Singh saying, great job, England. Good job, guys. We're on your side. Those anti-racist protests are working a treat. That's a problem, right? And it's a problem for the same reason that the G7 supported Guaido and give support to Guaido's replacement in Venezuela. They're pushing the globalist agenda by staying silent on England, right? They're pushing it because silence is agreement, right? They agree with what's going on in England, and so they're not going to condemn it because that's kind of what they want to do here, right? They think that the people in England are jailing deserve it, and maybe more, right? Probably a lot more. So here's Jagmeet Singh. He says, when racist mobs try to terrorize their neighborhoods, who are you going to call? No, he didn't say that. Good people rise up, he says. What happens in the United Kingdom is a reminder of this, is it? Here in Canada, those of us that believe in lifting each other up will always outnumber those that seek to tear us apart. Whether you were born here or came to this country, no matter your race, religion, or sexuality, our movement will always hold space for you. When we fight back, we win. They don't hold space for people who want to retain Canada as a Canadian country that built based on its founding documents and founding principles, et cetera, et cetera. Like they don't have any room in there. Like Jagmeet Singh doesn't have any room for me in his party, right? Because we totally disagree on absolutely everything. It's really interesting, right? He's saying, "Oh, we'll hold space for you no matter what you believe, except for those old stock Canadians. We want them gone," because that's what these protests are about, right? Anti-racism protesters gathered across England in pictures, right? So they're framing it in a way to make the anti-racist hoarding mobs of armed Muslims the good guys. Crazy, right? I've got footage of that, but first we've got to talk about some other things. D.D. Denslow says, there is zero violence online. It cannot be possible to charge someone with online violence, as violence requires physical force. Yes. Violence, as defined from Oxford, says behavior involving physical force intending to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. Right. And Michael Schellenberger says the same thing. There's no such thing as online violence. Violence is physical. Please stop your Orwellian war on speech. We're just getting started on the Orwellian war on speech. Holy cow. Here's Keir Starmer talking about online violence, right? This is the same in Canada. The reason I'm showing this is because it rhymes. We're doing exactly the same thing. New Zealand's doing exactly the same thing. Jacinda Ardern is working with universities to implement exactly the same thing. They're trying to do it across different sectors because they can't do it. If George W. Bush or Biden or Kamala Harris, whoever the president of the United States is, if they have a top-down directive, you must do this, there's going to be people who say no, right? And the president doesn't have the power to fire you at your textile company, right? So you have to start implementing through unions. You have to start implementing through states. You have to start implementing through public and private sector in all sorts of different ways. So that's what they're trying to roll out across all different ways. So there's no escape. You have to comply with this thing. That's the point. And they're trying to make anybody who doesn't comply a criminal. That's what this is for. It's a test bed. Here we go.
I think it's really important that we maintain high alert. I've obviously been here at the control room of the Met looking at what's essentially the nerve centre. But my message to the police and all of those that are charged with responding to disorder is maintain that high alert. I'm absolutely convinced that having the police officers in place these last few days in the right places, the swift justice that's being dispensed in our courts have had a real impact. But we have to stay on high alert going into this weekend because we absolutely have to make sure that our communities are safe.
Safe, right? Free of dissent and bad, evil thoughts. Like the St. George's Cross. Here is a British police officer assaulting somebody who's wearing a St. George's Cross as a flag. You can't see him, like you can see the officer push the guy, but you can't see the guy on camera until after because he falls out of So there you go. Police officers are just assaulting people, right? Pushing people. Here's a gang of armed Muslims. Amused says, are we still allowed to share videos from the United Kingdom? This looks very scary. These are the good guys. These are the guys that Keir Starmer is supporting. Just making sure we're all on the same page and understand what's happening. Here's another one. This person says, another firm on the outskirts or on the streets of Lancashire. Remember, it's the far right that's the problem. These guys are the good guys. These guys are the people that the government supports. Right? You get the point? So isn't that interesting? Here is LBC, and this person is sharing this. First Armchair Rioter jailed for 20 months over online post inciting racial hatred. 20 months. That's almost 2 years for a post online, right? Here is a 7. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful